What's up, guys? In this video, I'm going to be attempting to talk about this term, spiritual bypassing, which is a term that's become quite popular in these past years as spirituality and the new age spiritual scene has kind of ramped up in popularity. There's a specific terminology and a definition to what spiritual bypassing is, and I actually looked it up, and it was pretty much in line with what I understand spiritual bypassing to be. But yeah, it's essentially using spiritual ideas or spiritual perspectives or spiritual concepts as ultimately a cop-out for something that would otherwise just be pretty straightforward, pretty simple and understandable of a situation. And usually spiritual bypassing takes place with negative traits within ourselves or within someone else or a certain scenario, whatever it may be. Spiritual bypassing is when we use a spiritual idea as a sort of cover-up to make us feel more okay with this generally negative thing that's going on. And it's all too easy to do this because as humans, we have the ability to learn something and then say it as if that's how we feel. We have the ability to learn whatever it may be and then say it as if that's what we feel to be truth, as if that's what we feel, that's how we feel things are. But we can learn something and not believe it, really, at the end of the day, but still say it as if that's the case. And it might be to get someone off our back because we don't want to admit how we really feel about it, or we might not even notice that we're doing it, where we're saying things that we don't actually believe in at the end of the day. Like, just for example, you can say something like, death is an illusion, death is an illusion. I was never born and I shall never die, pretty far out, pretty tasty spiritual understanding right there. And you say that, death is an illusion, but then you're driving and someone pulls out in front of you and you almost get in a head-on collision and die, and you freak out and get all worked up and amped up, because although your mind can say death is an illusion, the actual way you feel and the way the body responds to the situation says completely otherwise, and that just reveals that there's not an integration between the different planes of our being. There's not an integration of understanding between the different planes of our being the body, mind, and spirit. The mind can say death is an illusion, but the body doesn't think so. The body thinks it dies. The body thinks, oh my god, I almost just fucking died, bro. You pull out in front of me and you get all angry about it. So that's just one example where the mind can say something, but ultimately we don't feel that that's true. You know what I mean? Or here's another situation where, say there's a sort of dilemma between you and a person, a conflict between you and a person, a conflict that it would be good to address and talk about. And you go to this being and you say, hey, I feel like we should talk about this. This has really been weighing on me. This is something I really want to get off my chest and talk about with you, and see what you have to say about it and see what you make of it and all that. And then they hit you with something like, the energy of this situation doesn't resonate with the essence of my being, or you know what I'm saying, something far out like that. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, the energy of this situation doesn't resonate with the essence of your being. You know what I'm saying? Like, and what's actually going on They say that, but what's actually going on is that they have a problem with confrontational moments and heavy emotions and heavy situations where a deep talk or a serious talk or a talk revolved around a heavy subject, a seemingly serious subject. That's what's going on, is that they can't deal with confrontational moments and that they can't have a serious talk with someone. But they spin it completely on its head and make it seem like some sort of energetic, you're wrong, I'm right, and I'm high on this spiritual energy, spiritual understanding, and what you're doing doesn't resonate with the essence of my being. And you know what I'm saying? We can use these spiritual statements as a complete cop-out from actually looking in to what's going on. Because like I was saying, you can say one thing but feel the other. And not only can you say one thing but feel the other, but you cannot know within yourself that what you're doing is spiritual bypassing, where you're using a spiritual ideology to mask an otherwise human, normal, emotional response or trauma response or reaction or whatever it is. We're using these spiritual ideas to sort of make ourselves feel better about the situation. And like, the craziest thing about the spiritual bypassing thing is that someone can be talking to you and act like they're absolutely enlightened and wise and brilliant, and they're just like a encyclopedia. They can just go on and on and on about these wonderful spiritual concepts and perspectives and tell you all about it, but all the while, they're not at that level. They don't feel that. They learned that, thought it was a cool idea, and then started talking about it as if that's the way things are. And I guess you could say it's kind of like walking your talk. You know what I mean? Where you can say something, but do you feel like that at the end of the day? You can say self is an illusion, but who just said that? And what do you feel yourself to be? You know what I mean? You're talking about self as an illusion, but then you're worried about how many likes you got on Instagram or how good you look going out into public or all that kind of stuff. And, situations where the self, moreover the ego, is very much so present. But when someone addresses you about ego and self and all that stuff, you say, oh, the self is an illusion. You see, the self is a concept within the mind, and it's based off of karmic circumstances where it feels like, and you're identifying with this point. And you can just talk about it as if and that's how you feel and shit. But what's going on is you learned this idea. The mind learned this idea, thought it was cool, and then started saying it as if that's what it believes things to be. And it may believe it to an extent, but there's a disharmony between the planes of our being. I don't know if I said that already, but there's a disharmony between a disharmony of understanding, where you say one thing but you feel the other. You know what I mean? Excuse me, sorry. Or another one, you say you're talking about time is an illusion, but then you're all uptight while you're at work because it's just dragging on and you want to be home. And it's like, how much is time an illusion in that situation? You know what I mean? If you feel like time is an illusion and death is an illusion and there's no such thing as a self and all these wonderful spiritual understandings and insights, you should be having a pretty good time. You should be having a pretty awesome ride through life. But as I've been saying, there's a disharmony of understanding between the different planes, where we say time is an illusion, we say death is an illusion, and we say there's no self, and all these kinds of things, but we still think time is real, we still think death is real, we still think we are a self. You know what I mean? Even if it's just residual. But generally, it's not residual, it's more so a dominant belief. And the residual is this new spiritual perspective that we've learned that we're kind of hiding behind. You know what I mean? That's a good way to put it, is hiding behind spiritual perspectives. Rather than just being honest, being like, damn, like, I still think time is real, I still feel like I'm this self, I think I'm gonna die. You know what I mean? Just being down to earth with how you feel. It's okay to be down to earth with how you feel. Rather than hiding behind these spiritual ideas that you've learned, that you aspire to understand and integrate into yourself, into your being, but ultimately aren't. You know what I mean? I've heard it put before that you know, it's like phony. You're being phony holy. You're being a phony holy, and essentially what you're saying hasn't actually happened to you yet. You're speaking from a place out beyond yourself. You're speaking about how you wish you were. You're not speaking about how you actually are. You're speaking about how you wish you were and how you wish you saw things. You know what I mean? You're a little bit ahead of yourself. You're a little bit phony holy. It hasn't happened to you yet. You know? You're flirting with the ideas of these spiritual perspectives, but you're kind of wearing them. It's not that you are these spiritual understandings. You're ascribing to these spiritual understandings. You hear someone say, death is an illusion, and you go, yeah, that, okay. What are your thoughts on death? Oh, death is an illusion. You know what I mean? You wear it. You wear it as an intellectual thing, rather than it being an actual way of being. You know, and what's funny, dude, is like, I can sit here, I could act like a really absurd and obnoxious spiritual know-it-all. You know what I mean? Talking about fucking, the essence of our being is just pure vibratory love and light, and we just are. And when you have this problem, it's a destined and determined unfolding of karma that's working itself out, and you thinking that you're solving the problem is just part of the path, while you're sitting back as awareness itself, the Atman, the consciousness itself, the substratum of existence itself, just here, happening. Wow. You know, I could talk about shit like a fucking a whack job, like really out there on the spiritual path, and some people could see me and be like, wow, like he's onto something, you know, he's talking about some crazy shit. But I'm over here still greedy and lustful and frustrated and sad and down and judgmental and all of it. But that is hiding behind this wonderful presentation of spiritual ideas that, because I've learned, I know how to articulate. You know what I mean? And that's the tricky part, is not only being able to discern in others, are they actually being straightforward? Like, are they being down to earth with what they're saying? Are they doing that spiritual bypassing thing? Not only that, but being able to discern within yourself, do you even believe in what you're talking about? You know what I mean? At the end of the day, no one around, all alone, how do you really feel? How do you really feel about things? You know? Do you really believe in what you're saying? It can be hard to discern that sometimes. And another thing I've heard about this whole spiritual bypassing thing is if somebody comes to you with a problem and you deliver to them a beautiful spiritual perspective, but you don't actually feel that within, it's just what you think you should say, it at times can cut that person off from understanding where you're actually trying to come from. You know what I'm saying? You can cut that person off because where it's, you're saying all this stuff, but where it's coming from is not it itself. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a complicated topic to talk about. Hold on. But I think it's an important thing to talk about and address. Because the mind is crazy. The mind is crazy. The ego is crazy. Somebody comes to you with a problem and you are on this head trip of thinking that you're this spiritual being that's going to liberate this suffering soul, and you're a bodhisattva and you're here to help and teach or something like that. You're on a head trip, you know, an ego trip. And you say something you've learned through the intellect, being all wise and sharing with them a beautiful perspective. But the place it's coming from is your own lack of actual understanding of that. And you're trying to sound spiritual and you're trying to give them this spiritual teaching. You can make it even harder for them, because now they just heard this spiritual thing that very much so could have helped them, but the place that it was coming from was not genuine. You know? You were trying to share with them this spiritual perspective, you know? And you can't blame yourself either. You can't blame yourself either. You know, because if someone comes to me and tells me they're having a hard time, I'm definitely not going to say, well, you're fucked. You know, better luck. I hope you get better. No, I'm going to engage with how I feel about the dynamics of what they just said and what I've experienced, and relate to them and tell them how I feel about the emotion or the situation or the activity of the mind and that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to blow them off because I'm afraid to spiritually bypass, you know what I mean? But I'm also not going to act like I know and I'm about to tell them how it really is, you know what I mean? Because we can do that. We can do that. I've seen these memes before of like what arguments look like between two spiritual people, and it's friggin' hilarious, bro. Like it's literally what I'm talking about. Where it's two people that are uptight about some silly ass situation, but the way that they're engaging with each other and the dialogue that they're sharing between each other is like, I understand what you've said, but I feel like you're resonating on a very dense level of being, and I can't seem to penetrate into the I behind the mind, and we're not receiving each other in this moment. And then the other person's like, I hear you, but I feel like I feel like you're just blockaded by negative karmic conditioning, and you aren't able to break through into a space of clarity and serenity and understanding. You know what I mean? It's just fucking using spiritual words to talk about a normal ass ego based situation. You know? Like, come off that spiritual high horse a little bit and just talk about how, like, dude, like, I'm pissed about this right now, and like it's I don't want to be pissed about it, but I'm pissed, and here we are, and do you want to talk about it, and how do you feel, and this is why I feel the way I do, and just being down to earth about it. You don't got to talk about your crystalline being and resonance and energy and fucking your essence and all this crazy shit, which is beautiful when it's coming from a genuine place. That's the thing. That's the thing. When you're actually talking about the essence, when you're actually talking about energy, when you're actually talking about karma, when you're actually talking about love and understanding and wisdom and these kinds of things, when that's where you're coming from, that's when it's a wonderful thing to use as a vehicle of articulation. But when you're doing it to cover up ego, it hurts you and it hurts others. It confuses you even further because you muddy up the water of your own being, and you have this negative thing going on. But since you've framed it to yourself in such a way that it seems like a grandiose spiritual understanding, it makes shit worse for you because you can't identify it, and it makes shit worse for others because you're acting like you don't have a problem. You know what I mean? And you're not being honest about what's really going on. You know? And it could make the other being, if the other being recognizes that that's what you're doing, it can make them realize, like, wow, bro, like, you're really, like, you're spiritual bypassing and you're not even aware of it, you know? Not only that, but if they aren't aware that you're doing this spiritual bypassing thing, they could think, like, wow, like, I'm not as good as them. I'm in the wrong here. Like, they have it understood, man. Like, I'm not doing things right. Like, they understand. I'm just a negative ball of energy, and I just interfered with their essence and shit. Like, I need to check myself. And doing this spiritual bypassing thing, I guess in that sense, can be like a form of gaslighting, where, like, you're just fucking lying. You're just lying. You're not being honest. You're not being down to earth with how you feel. You're not willing to admit how you're being, you know, or what you believe in. And like I said, you might recognize that in yourself, or you might not. I feel like spiritual bypassing is a lot more prominent these days than it has ever been in the past, because of not only the rising popularity of spirituality and that kind of stuff in this time that we live in, but the ability for us to learn, just look something up and learn about this wonderful spiritual understanding or spiritual perspective, and then, like I said, just put it on like a little coat. Put it on like makeup, like you're just wearing spiritual ideologies, but you don't actually, that's not actually where you're coming from. You know what I mean? It's a facade. It's a lie, essentially, where you're not getting down with working on yourself genuinely and honestly, because you have the ability to learn about this spiritual perspective and then just kind of feel like you don't have a problem because it's all spiritual and I'm all right and you're wrong, and you know what I'm saying? Maybe this video is a little spacey and not very direct and formal, but I just wanted to talk about spiritual bypassing and what that's all about and how I feel about it, you know what I mean? I sure as hell do it and have done it before, where somebody says something to me and I act like I get it and I understand, you know what I mean? But the way I feel inside is not actually, you know, I'm saying one thing, but I don't actually feel it within. So yeah, I wanted to share that with you guys. Let me know what you think. Let me know experiences you've had doing it yourself or interacting with somebody where you thought that they could be doing this spiritual bypassing thing. Let me know what you think of this whole spiritual bypassing thing. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it made some sort of sense. And I will see you guys later on. Namaste.